We are coming to you. This program is Issues and Answers on the WCEG Network, and we are the worldwide Community Empowerment Group. That's what WCEG means. Let me say that again: Worldwide Community Empowerment Group, where we speak life to the community. You can tell your friends. Some of you are listening right now, but no, you can tell your friends. And if they want to ever get in touch and listen to us live, a live broadcast, all you have to do is go to put in your browser, in your computer, WCEGtalkradio.com. And from there, you can follow the links. You can watch us on your smart TV. You can watch us on your Roku cable channel, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and guess what? Now on Fanbase, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're there. We're growing, and it's all for you. So search for WCEG and subscribe on all social media platforms. We'll be there. You know, as I always say, if you become a friend of WCEG on Facebook, you can participate in our live broadcast by texting in your questions and comments. I invite that every program. I look forward to it. Your questions, your comments, because the program is all about not just me, it's about you and your concerns. Ladies and gentlemen, again, I am Norman A. Carter Jr., your host of Issues and Answers. And I will be with you for the next hour. I hope just an hour, but it may go a little over. We'll see. But folks, you know, you can download our free WCEG mobile app. And that makes it easy to use your smartphone. And after you download the app, just hit the button and say, Alexa, play WCEG Talk Radio. And listen to WCEG on any of our 12, count them, 12 podcast distribution platforms. Last but not least, our disclaimer: the topics and the opinions that you hear right here on Issues and Answers are those of moi and our guests. This week, I don't have any, and not the WCEG Media Enterprise Network. And thank you for your continued support. While we're talking about the WCEG Media Enterprise Network, let me impart this information to you because it fills me with pride. WCEG Digital Media Enterprise received the Stones in Selma Award and represented the state of Georgia for our community engagement programming, which goes from civil rights, justice, equity and economic empowerment, voting rights and voter education, veteran entitlements and resources, mental wellness, millennial engagement, spiritual and faith-based initiatives, immigration law, business and marketplace development, traditional and holistic wellness, and so much more. This occurred on July 5th and 4th in Selma, Alabama. And guess what, folks? This award is recognized by the United States Congress. So, you know what? I am going to applaud WCEG and our CEO, Mrs. Penny Rogers. Thank you. And you know, we have a new platform now, so we're available on Twitch, not Twitch, but Twitch. So you can view us there. And ladies and gentlemen, let's just delve right into our programming. Unfortunately, I have no guests today, but a lot of what I'm going to do today might be off the top of my head, but that's good because then I mean I don't have to read it. But I was just discussing with someone just recently about the paranoia that's gripping this country because of the actions of our current president and ICE. Now, some of you don't view it as a big thing, a big thing. In fact, some of you think it's a joke. Some of you think that it's something that, hey, you know what? Let's get rid of all of them. Talking about immigrants. Let me tell you where this gets to be sad. Uh, Many of you know that I speak Spanish pretty well, pretty well. And recently, my wife was in the Piedmont Hospital, Piedmont Atlanta Hospital. And one day, as I was entering the elevator, this family of obviously Spanish speaking people were getting off of the elevator. And they were speaking in Spanish, but what I understood them saying was that, and I'm paraphrasing now, is that their one fear is that ICE would come in and look for their relative who was in the hospital. Can you imagine having a relative sick enough to be in the hospital, obviously not capable of coming out or doing anything, and rather than worrying just about their health, you have to worry about someone coming into that hospital masked and snatching them out of a hospital bed. Think about that. Think about that. We move on. I've got so many topics to get into. Uh, we're going to be getting into a lot of topics in this coming season. One thing I will say to you is that I will not be entertaining any political cowards. And not that I ever played gotcha, don't do gotcha questions, but I do ask questions that I think are relative to the position you aspire to if you're a political figure. Um, I think it's fair to the public and it should be fair to you. So uh, those things will be evolving in the future. And one thing, if you follow me on Facebook, uh, I put this out last night and I put it out last year. Uh, it bothers me and I find it a little strange that Republicans are afraid to come on WCEG. Republican political figures. We put that because my buddy Robert Lee has been on WCEG several times. Great guy, very intelligent. He is a political consultant, and I really enjoy conversations with him. Uh, but Republican politicians, when I ask them to come on to discuss education, school safety, they immediately go silent. Uh, Democratic candidates are great for coming on WCEG when they are running for office. But if you try to catch up with them and you know who you are, after they're elected, they never have any time. Answer the concerns of the public who elected them. They play a great game of dodgeball. And I think last year I called a few out uh, who did that. And don't be surprised if I do it again. Now, I'm a sports fan. I root for the Braves, the Falcons, the Eagles, because I'm from Philly, and the Hawks. The operative word is root, which means cheer or support. I do not pray for them to win. Yesterday, a Facebook friend posted that he was praying for the Falcons to win because he liked Tampa Bay less than he liked the Atlanta team. He became incensed with me because uh, uh, I offered that There are more important things to pray for than for a sports team to win. I asked, don't you think people getting bombed every day in Ukraine are worthy of your prayers? How about praying for those starving in Gaza or for the Israelis being held hostage by terrorists? What about praying for the family of those children either shot or traumatized by the shooting at Annunciation Catholic School? Or do you just pray for suffering Black people? Maybe, or am I taking God too seriously? That could be. But, but maybe God is concerned about who wins the game. I don't know. But as I said to this fellow, God is not to be played with or trivialized. We seem to do that more and more, even in some churches. Now, I'd just like to, after I get off of that, I just want to go into a topic. I've talked about this before, but it's use of the N word. I started following a comedian on Facebook because I like some of his political jokes that really poke fun at some of the foibles of our political system, some of our own foibles, and I just found him to be amusing. But yesterday or Saturday, I was listening to one of his excerpts from one of his concerts, and he used the N word and thought it funny. At that moment, I decided no more following Mr. Josh Johnson. Yep, I'll call his name out. Hey, he is who he is. Can't follow him anymore. Um, as I had mentioned before, if you or any comedian are stuck on degrading African Americans by calling them a name that dehumanized them to the point that it justified treating them as less than human, hanging them as strange fruit on poplar trees, burning them, burning them out of their homes, denying them the right to vote, placing them in fear at night for being shot or killed just because they were Black. If you feel comfortable in using that term to describe yourself and your people, I pity you. I actually pity you. You are out of touch with reality, and you are part of the dehumanization of your own race. That's an abomination. This is the 21st century. None of us, none of us should be using that word. None of us. And especially our comedians. It is no longer funny. And if you find it funny for a comedian to refer to people of our race by the N word, and these are always, always African American comedians, there's something wrong with them and there's something wrong with you. And let me tell you why it's wrong. Because if a white comedian uses the same word and tells the same joke, you come after him. You're on social media, you're calling for him to be fired from wherever he is. Yeah, that's hypocrisy, folks. That's what they call hypocrisy. It's a bad word, it's a dehumanizing word. And if you use it, you're out of touch with reality, which leads right into my next topic. Lift every voice and sing. Some of you are not going to like what I say, but I'm speaking facts. I'm speaking truth. Last week there was outrage voice because lift every voice and sing was sung at the opening of the Dallas Cowboys versus Philadelphia Eagles football game. Note to dummies and racists. It is no less patriotic to sing Lift Every Voice and Sing at sporting events than it is to sing God Bless America at baseball games. Stop swimming in your cesspool of ignorance. Remember that phrase, with all thy getting, get understanding? Huh? Read, listen, and learn. Lift Every Voice and Sing was a poem written by James Weldon Johnson and set to music by his brother John. It was first performed in 1900 by 500 school children in celebration of the birthday of Abraham Lincoln. Those of you who are frequent listeners to my broadcast have often heard me close my programs with the last verse of this prayerful poem. I wanted people to listen and to try to understand the patriotism, that is, love of country, embodied in this song. This song was never, never, never meant to be sung by only African American people. If you believe that, then you have never heard nor understood its words. Did you know that a legislator, maybe about 40 years ago, lobbied Congress to have this song replace our national anthem? In my opinion, it is more patriotic than the song that was originally entitled The Defense of Fort McHenry, which evolved to be called the Star Spangled Banner and then dubbed by Congress as the national anthem in 1931. Let me read to you the words to the last verse of this song. Again, God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. My question is, why are African American singers afraid to sing this verse? Why are white Americans avoiding singing the song at all? Is it because it praises God and asks his guidance? Not only is it not sung at sporting events, it is not sung in churches. If you go through the wording of this song, it was never written for only Black people. It was written for all people. The fact that the NAACP adopted it as its theme song led to it being thought of as a song only for people of color. But the words say, lift every voice. That was not directed at only Black people. It was meant for every American to raise their voices as high as the soaring sky to celebrate the harmony of liberty. Harmony means many factions working together in concert to bring about a beautiful melody. Isn't that what America is supposed to be about? Our problem today is that both blacks and whites are stuck on a negative tradition that works to keep us all separated in thought, in work, in churches, and in our communities. So I beg of you, get over your negative tradition and embrace the harmony and wisdom of this song. Otherwise, most of you will remain stuck on stupid. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, as we move along, reminded you are listening to WCEG Network, and I am Norman A. Carter Jr., your host for today's installment of Issues and Answers. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. I'm sure most of you know who he is. I hope to speak about this more later, but to understand where I'm coming from, you have to shed the stupid shackles of partisan politics and divest yourselves of pragmatic lies about our country. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Alaskan Governor Sarah Palin were both extremely poor choices for vice president. There is an old song by Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes called I Should Be Your Lover. In that song, there is a line that fits Sarah Palin. It says, you've got a body, but your body is by Fisher, but your mind is by Mattel. Now, for you millennials and you all-day churchgoers, Fisher was an automotive company that designed automobile bodies. Mattel was a toy manufacturer. Palin was picked because she was eye candy, not because of her brain. Tim Walz was picked because of his appeal to beer drinkers and football fans. Neither was worthy of being one heart attack away from the presidency. And here's my point. 2 weekends ago, there was a malicious posting on social media that President Trump had died. Governor Walz spoke at some event the following Monday after the malicious posting had been proven false. He averred that the death of President Trump should be something we should wish for. There was not one word of condemnation from his political party, the Democratic Party. Not only was Walz's statement stupid and uncivilized, but the silence from his political party, the Democrats, was and is shameful. Now, all of us have to stop equivocating or rationalizing bad behavior. Why? The MAGA movement has been doing this for 12 years. We patriots, that's me, and those like me, cannot allow ourselves to sink to the level of snail scum in order to battle these people who live in an alternative reality. That is not my observation. Kellyanne Conway, President Trump's former spokesperson, told the world that MAGA philosophy resides in the world of alternative facts. Alternative facts are only viable in an alternative reality. Rather than wishing for Trump to die, we should wish that the 35% of eligible voters who did not vote in 2024 had voted. We should wish that the barber chair geniuses who berated former President Obama on national television and then showed their misogynistic shortcomings by dismissing a qualified female senator for the presidency of this country only because she was a woman. You should wish they had thought before they spoke. Instead, their their support for a man who called this woman dumb, stupid, a bitch, and a cunt. Those were his words. So much for Black pride. What do these men think of their wives, their mothers, and their sisters? I'm just, we move on. And WCEG's Issues and Answers with Norman A. Carter Jr. Mwah. Keep in mind, the opinions expressed here are mine and mine alone, and not the management of WCEG Digital Media Enterprises. A lot of you have heard this term gerrymandering lately, been in the news. If you have listened to Issues and Answers with Norman A. Carter Jr. for the past few years, you know that I have often criticized our antiquated electoral college. It's as out of date as our Second Amendment and the muskets for which it was written. In short, it denies us the promise, that's gerrymandering, denies us the promise of one man, one vote when it comes to electing presidents. This is why Donald Trump and others who run for the presidency spend more time in some of the larger states than they do in the smaller ones. When was the last time you saw or heard about a large presidential rally held in Rhode Island or Delaware or New Jersey? So let's talk about the stepchild of the Electoral College, gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is the political practice of drawing district lines in favor of their party to expand their power. It is a way of holding on to power and muting the voice of opposition. It was named after Massachusetts Senator Elbridge Gerry. He was a signer of the Declaration of Independence and the vice president of the United States of America. This practice was as unethical then as it is now. Both major parties today engage in this behavior. Neither does it fairly. Normally, it is a practice done every 10 years after the national census. But today, it has become part of the authoritarian power grab of President Donald Trump. Unlike some of you, I'm going to call him just who and what he is. He is President Donald Trump, whether you like it or not. Donald Trump ordered the state of Texas to create 5 more Republican districts. Now, this could only be done by rewriting the district maps and eliminating districts that have been assumed to be Democratic leaning. Please remember that this is the same man who, when he lost the 2020 election, begged the Georgia Secretary of State to find him 1,189 votes in order to secure the electoral votes he needed to overturn the election. The Secretary of State denied this request, as did another state Secretary of State in the Midwest. What do we need? We need legislators, honest legislators, to overhaul this antiquated system and end this unethical practice. You, America, you should be questioning anyone running for Congress about changing this system and then hold them accountable. Stop supporting career politicians. Support people who embrace fairness, integrity, and science. You'll find out why that's important shortly. We move to, excuse me, the Department of Health and Human Services. Let me take a breath, drink, because this is law. Aquafina, the pause that refreshes. The Department of Health and Human Services. Well, well, well. Some of you never paid attention to that department until recently. Many of you didn't even know it existed. What a shame. Everyone with an average to above average intellect should realize by now that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is ill equipped mentally to be in charge of the Department of Health and Human Services. He has admitted to being a heroin addict for 14 years. Let me read that again. He has admitted to being a heroin addict for 14 years. Okay, let's get away from elective office. Let me talk about some of you seeking employment or had relatives seeking employment. There is not one job in corporate America that would trust as its leader, a person who is a drug addict with a lengthy record of heavy and illegal drug use. Think about that. I'm going to repeat it again. There is not one job in corporate America that would trust as its leader a person who is a drug addict with a lengthy record of heavy and illegal drug use. This is cray cray. Cray cray. That's right. Yet we have United States senators who believe that a person with that type of diminished morality and drug dependency should be the leader of the Department of Health and Human Services for all of America. That's cray cray. Crazy. Most of you have forgotten that in 1987, President Ronald Reagan, who a lot of Republicans to this very day worship as if he was the second coming, President Ronald Reagan nominated for judge of the Supreme Court Judge Robert Bork, B-O-R-K. That nomination was struck down because Bork admitted to having smoked marijuana. Smoked marijuana. Not a heroin addict, not even a marijuana addict, but he smoked marijuana. He admitted that. That was disqualifying. That killed his nomination. Think about that. What has changed between 1987 and now? These Republicans, all of whom are Republican, all worship Ronald Reagan. They call it today the party of Reagan, not the party of Lincoln anymore, the party of Reagan. They won't call it the party of Lincoln because Lincoln is responsible or put into motion the freeing of slaves in America. It was completed after his death, but he put that into motion. They ain't claiming that because their agenda has gone totally opposite now. Now, a bunch of stupefied and emasculated senators, two of whom are physicians, confirmed Kennedy to manage a department responsible for setting health guidance for all of America. Yet many Americans who are either brainwashed or brain dead found nothing with this man making health decisions that can cause needless death and suffering. I want you all to keep in mind that a rotten fish first smells at the head. Need I say more? Need I say more? I'm going to talk about one of my favorite people here, President Dwight David Eisenhower. Let me give you a few quotes from this Republican, uh-huh, a Republican president. One quote: "We the people elect leaders not to rule, but to serve." Dwight David Eisenhower. Let that marinate in your brain for a minute. We the people elect leaders not to rule, but to serve. It sort of reminds me of evangelicals and Christians. Something that person y'all call, most of you call Jesus, said about being a servant. Remember that? The man who washed the disciples' feet. Remember that? Not to rule, but to serve. Another quote: "Never let yourself be persuaded that any one great man, any one leader is necessary to the salvation of America. When America consists of one leader and 158 million followers, it will no longer be America." Now, at that time, we had 158 million people. We're over 300 million now. But think about that and how relevant that is today. Never let yourself be persuaded that any one great man, any one leader is necessary to the salvation of America. When America consists of one leader and 158 million followers, you can extrapolate that and make that 300 million followers. It will no longer be America. I want all of you brainwashed Republicans and some of you Democrats to think about that. Think about that from Dwight D. Eisenhower, one of the greatest Republican presidents, one of the greatest presidents we ever had. Here's another one of these questions, and this is relevant to today, especially the last administration and this administration. He says, "No one should ever sit in this office over 70 years old, and that I know." Dwight David Eisenhower said that how many years ago? Back in the 50s? Can you find its relevance today? Can you remember recently we had a president who fumbled with his words, couldn't make a decision, and threw the whole country out of whack by running for reelection? Now you have another in there who wants to stay in that office until he's called home to glory. Think about that, folks. Here's another quote from Dwight Eisenhower. This is important. It's relevant to today. "The middle of the road is all of the usable surface." Repeat that line. The middle of the road is all of the usable surface. The extremes, right and left, are in the gutters. Can I repeat that all for you? Because some of you won't get it or don't get it. The middle of the road is all of the usable surface. The extremes, right and left, are in the gutters. Dwight David Eisenhower. Now, I'm not here to tell you that Dwight David Eisenhower is the greatest president of my lifetime, but he is among the most forgotten. I find that strange, especially among African Americans. President Eisenhower and his predecessor, a Democrat, President Harry Truman, were responsible for the full integration of our military services. President Eisenhower signed the Civil Rights Act of 1957. President Eisenhower ordered troops and federal agents to be sent to protect African American students entering segregated public schools and colleges. Under President Eisenhower, an interstate highway system was created. This former five-star general of the Army, and that is a very rare designation, is seldom referred to by today's Republicans. Perhaps today's Republicans are envious of his integrity, his foresight, and his dedication to liberty and justice for all. Democrats are too selfish and too self-centered to give any credit to any good thing a Republican has done. Yet all of us could learn a lot from the wisdom and leadership of Dwight David Eisenhower. He was the one who insisted that, quote, one nation under God, end quote, be inserted into our national anthem. Okay, evangelicals, formerly the racist Southern Belt, aren't you ashamed of yourselves yet? Now, this may sound like a little self-promotion. It is what it is. See that thingy back here, The Long Blue Walk? That was a book that I wrote. And the book was written to empower police officers to speak out, to speak truth to power. And it was also designed to make the public aware of the internal and external pressures felt by police officers actively serving. In addition, my book, not that I'm a genius, because I'm not, far from it. I know my IQ score, so I'm far from it. But my book contained some cost-effective solutions to corruption, to brutality, to communication, to public safety that could be easily instituted by any department. And not that I have great foresight, I'll be honest with you. I sent letters to the leaders of several cities and several police departments, particularly those who had African American mayors or African American police leaders. I sent my letters to them. Those cities that I sent my letters and copies of my book that I paid for out of my pocket, sent them to Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Los Angeles, and Philadelphia. I talked about this before because the African American, when I sent to Philadelphia, I sent not only copies of my book to the police commissioner, who was African American, I sent them to nearly every member on Philadelphia City Council, which is predominantly African American. And I can tell you about Philly, that even when a reporter from the Philadelphia Inquirer asked the police commissioner what was his opinion of my book, he said he never heard of it, even though I had sent him 2 letters and a copy of my book. The entirety of city council stated they never heard of my book, even though I sent copies of my book and letters to each and every one of them. They all lied. And here's the problem. And again, this is not self promotion, but this is fact. It seems as though political and civic leaders are reticent to listen or to acknowledge any Black person, especially who doesn't have a degree, who doesn't have a high position, who doesn't have a high title. They are easily ignored. You see, I'm like most of you. No title, just Joe Citizen who wrote a book with the purpose of saving lives and helping communities, but ignored. And I mentioned that. I mentioned that because had these people listening, and I'm not inflating myself, but had these people listened and enacted many things that I proposed in my book, they would have tremendous community support, so much community support that there would be outrage by by an informed public about any intervention by the National Guard or federal forces or military into their cities for the purposes of enforcing laws. That's 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 an abomination. That when help comes to you, and most of these civic leaders have no experience in law enforcement, none. All of the cities that I sent these letters to had problems, with policing in their company, in their country. Uh, yeah, and even today we find that even with people with titles, sometimes uh, they aren't listened to. People don't want to help. You have, I tell you, 2 senators in Georgia. Uh-huh. I'm going to talk them. I'm going to call them out. I sent copies of my book to them. Only one responded. And I spoke to him just a couple of months ago. His name was John Ossoff. The other one, just like everybody else, no time for me, no time for WCEG. Sorry, did I let that out? Uh, Ignored. I've got no title. I'm just Joe Citizen, who he supposedly represents, offering help. No time, no letter. At least I got a letter of gratitude from John Ossoff. Amazing. I talked to him a couple of months ago. He remembered. John Ossoff. Uh, Another one I'll talk about. Hank Johnson, congressman from Metro Atlanta, sent him a copy of my book and a letter. Got a response not only back from him but from his office, from his assistants. Got all kinds of response back from them. Acknowledgement. Thank you. It's frustrating, folks. It's frustrating. People will tell you, and this is why I said at the beginning of this program, politicians love to talk to you when they're running for election, but far too many of them want nothing to do with you after they get in office. What a darn shame. So anyway, and what I part my whole that was all of this is prefacing my belief that when we talk about the National Guard, I'm going to try to be brief because I talk so much about that. But what is happening in Washington, D.C. is a dry run. It's a practice, just as the insurrection of 2021 was a practice. Here we go. I agree with Governor Pritzker of Illinois. He stated the following, I guess it was yesterday, maybe. He stated this, talking about sending the National Guard to these cities, all of which are Democratic cities, run by Democratic leaders. He stated the following: we know what it's all about, and it has nothing to do with fighting crime. And it has, honestly, sending the National Guard, excuse me, has nothing to do with immigration either. Excuse me. What it has to do with is he is trying to set the stage. Listen to this. He's trying to set the stage for interference in the elections of 2026 and 2028. Now, some of you find that outlandish. Let me give you some recent history. Have you forgotten that Trump wanted to send the military to voting locations when he ran for re-election and lost? That is what authoritarian leaders do. This is what Hitler did. And to all of you MAGA lovers and sympathizers, this is exactly what Hitler did. Now, when I mentioned this several years ago, I was excoriated on Facebook and condemned by many right here in my own city. To this very day, there are people here who hate me because I said this several years ago. Yet, this is the truth. As I have said many times, if you have not viewed it, check out the Issues and Answers broadcast of February 8th, 2021. That program was entitled January 6th, 2021, The American Apocalypse. That program has been viewed more times than most of my broadcasts here at WCEG. It's been viewed because it spoke the truth, and the truth came from experts on the topic of fascism, racism, and anti-Semitism. Woo. So when it comes to Trump and the MAGA movement, you are not judging a book by its cover. All the pages are thrown in your face every single day. But you must first open your eyes and then open your mind. Condemning MAGA is not condemning all Republicans. It is only condemning those who shield themselves behind the title Republican, but have an agenda that is neither Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Independent, or any other American concept that reflects the ideals of our United States Constitution. Kind of move right along very quickly. Praying in our schools and churches. Men and women of America, I do not mean to sound sacrilegious, and please don't take it that way. But God is not protecting you if you continue to be foolish. You cannot pray in churches, synagogues, or schools without having a human watching over you with tools to protect you. No one was watching at the Tree of Life Synagogue. No one was watching at the Annunciation Catholic School. No one was watching at the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. Today, we're like the Yehudim, y'all call them Jews, wandering through the desert. Us, are wandering through a time of moral wilderness. Even the Yehudim, led by Musa, who you call Moses, through the desert had weapons. Even they had weapons. Even though God was protecting them and guiding them, they had weapons. The disciples or emissaries who followed Yeshua, you call him Jesus, carried weapons for protection. It's in the Bible. I'm not making this up. You cannot leave the doors of your churches, your synagogues, and your schools open and unguarded. That is foolish. That is irresponsible. That can be deadly. Word to the wise. You can pray with your head up and your eyes open. But if you don't mind dying an untimely death, just keep doing what you're doing and sing that song, I Won't Complain. Moving along real quick. Boy, we're going long here. I'm going to try to get rid of this real fast. I know WCEG, you're saying, why is this guy running so long? But I'm going to move right along as quickly as I can. Let me talk about assault rifle 15. Everyone who has had military service is familiar with the term assault rifle, assault rifle. Talking about assault rifle 15. I never heard of that, some of you saying. What is that? Yet, the National Rifle Association and politicians whom they have bought and own will never, ever use this term. They have taught the public to use the term AR-15 or AR-15 like for these types of weapons that are designed for combat. In the military, you are taught to aim what is called the K5 or kill zone. In combat, that is often difficult to do because either your target is moving, partially hidden, or engaged in suppressive fire. The best weapon under those circumstances is one that can fire rapidly and inflict the most damage on impact. For you civilians with short memories, let me bring you back a few short years to the exploits of Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse was an American kid, yeah, a kid, who gained national attention at the age of 17 for shooting 3 men in Kenosha, Wisconsin, 2 fatally in August of 2020. This happened amid protests following the police shooting of Jacob Blake. He actually was too young to possess an AR-15, assault rifle 15. But this self-appointed vigilante carried one openly one night. He wounded one man by shooting him in the arm. That one bullet from an AR-15 destroyed that man's arm. Do you remember the shooting at the school in Uvalde, Texas? Another assault rifle 15 lover shot and killed several children. The damage to some of those children was so severe that they could not be identified and only could it be identified by DNA samples. Think about that. Their faces were demolished. That is what an assault rifle 15 is designed to do. It is not a defensive weapon. It is not a defensive weapon. Let's go to the Second Amendment to the Constitution real quick. It states, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I have discussed this on prior programs, but this time I'll be brief. This amendment is the moral sanctuary for those who care little about the bloodshed caused by people who should never have access to weapons of war. The Second Amendment was written at a time when the fledgling military could not afford to arm its soldiers. People mostly used their own weapons during the Revolutionary War and in some cases the Civil War. Those soldiers used weapons that had an effective kill range, excuse me, of about 75 yards and took an expert about 30 seconds to load each round. The weapons we have today have an effective kill range of 3/4 of a mile and can fire sometimes 2, 3, 400 rounds a minute. Think about that. These soldiers, well, let me move on. In addition, when the Second Amendment was written, it was a time of national paranoia. There was always the fear of a tyrannical takeover of the country by a domestic or foreign enemy seeking power. Therefore, a militia of volunteers was needed to be called up when needed, and they had to be armed with their own weapons. Today, there is no need for militias. We have armed forces with superior weapons, jet planes, and aircraft carriers. Militias are an anachronism, and so is the Second Amendment. This amendment, which gives sanctuary to mental midgets who are infatuated with high powered weapons that eventually fall into the hands of evil and vengeful people, have no moral compass. Until people make these regressive shields for murderers, a shamed minority, we will continue to have murders in those places where people expect peace, learning, and worship. I'll move on. Hope I'm not running over time here. Uh, Changing the Bible to fit selfish narratives. I spoke about this before, but it's important. When it came to the candidacy of Senator Kamala Harris for the presidency of the United States, many Americans, excuse me, especially evangelicals and African American male millennials who have minimal knowledge of scripture, hung their hats on 1 Timothy 4:12 as the reason for not voting for Senator Harris. Firstly, the book of 1 Timothy is one of the disputed books of Paul. They don't talk about that in church, do they? Scholars have determined that it was written after Paul's death by disciples he trained. If you study the history of Paul, you know that he was an egalitarian, just as Yeshua, whom you call Jesus. He put women on equal footing as men. Yet this disputed verse is used by church leaders throughout the world, and it is wrong. But it's not wrong to the ignorant and the misogynist. It reads, but I do not allow, but I do not allow a woman to train or dictate to a man, but be in a quiet demeanor. In short, that means a woman should be humble, closed mouthed, and submissive. Woman beaters love this view. Just remember this: despite that purposely intimidating phrase you are forced to say in church, men wrote the Bible, not God. Yet, yes, it is God inspired by but even the original manuscripts and over have been edited over the years, and some things have been added to it. Man's hands are all over the Bible. This is in great evidence in 1 Timothy 4:12. People, you need to be more discerning and smarter. Stop changing the Bible to fit your selfish purposes. It's bad enough that you are stuck on using the wrong name and saying that it is the name above all names. Neither Yeshua nor the God of Abraham, who spoke to the prophets, spoke English. Think about that. There is no J in either Hebrew nor Aramaic. The sound of J and the letter J was added to the English language in the 12th century. But most of you will continue to use a name that was a misprinting of the Latin Iesus, that's IESUS, and claim its rightness and its power. I say to you, Baruch Hashem Adonai, in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach ben Elohim. Immigrations and customs for me. Once again, I'm going to be quick. Once again, I try to be brief. The president's misuse of this important agency, ICE, will have consequences for years to come. Just remember that 2 years ago, a bipartisan committee drafted immigration reform legislation. Candidate and former President Donald Trump ordered Republicans to vote against this proposed legislation. The purpose was to give him a topic to campaign upon. This selfish and insensitive move has resulted in deaths, family separations, and needless sufferings for hundreds of thousands of people. For months, it was only Latinos. Now it's Koreans. Trump has already threatened to send American criminals out of the country to these death camps. Yet there is silence. It's happening here. Yet there is no outrage. Where do we go from here? Ladies and gentlemen, this has been fun. This is the beginning of the new season. I'd just like to let you know that coming up on September 22nd, my special guest host will be Mrs. Triana Arnold James. She's been with us before. And on October 13th, former mayor of South Fulton, Georgia, the Honorable William Bill Edwards will be with you. I thank you for being a viewer and listener of WCEG's Issues and Answers with Norman A. Carter Jr. I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Take care of yourself. Take it light. Sleep tight. Good night.